Hello, and today on the Minnesota High School podcast, we are interviewing Jessica Chipman from Alexandria High School. And I'm Colin Schultz from Belle Plaine, Minnesota. And I'm currently the assistant director for the LeSueur High School 1 Act.
I am Alexa Olson, and I'm currently a student involved in theater at LeSueur Henderson High School.
And so we are happy to have you on today, Jessica. And we're going to ask you some questions, and we hope to have some great conversations. And please feel free to talk about whatever you would like and expand on any ideas that you have. So our first question for you today is, when were you first introduced to theater, and what has led you to where you are today?
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm thrilled to speak with you about all things theater today. I first was introduced to theater when I was very young. My parents took me to productions. I think the first thing that I ever saw was some version of Snow White and maybe some other fairy tales. And my mom was a fan of musical theater, still is a fan of musical theater. And so she was always playing cast recordings and showing us old musical films. And it just became something that I fell in love with. And I studied it in college as a minor, and then went on to get my MA in theater production. Started teaching theater arts at Alexandria Area High School, where I am right now, and then decided to go back for my MFA in directing. And so that's kind of the very short version of a lifelong love of theater.
Great.
So what's the history of Alexandria's theater program?
So one of my predecessors, her name was Linda Capistrant, and she is a very beloved theater educator and director in our community. And so she was a longtime educator at what used to be Jefferson High School in Alexandria, and now it's Alexandria Area High School. And just instilled in many students a love of theater. I think under her direction, there were some one-act play state performances. She is an amazing costumer and designer, and so she spent hours and hours building a beautiful costume selection that we're still working with. And there was one educator in between us, just a year in between us, who continued the program. And then I took over the program about 10 years ago, and have been here ever since.
So what do you think are the benefits of having theater in high school?
There's so many. Off the top of my head, one of the first things that comes to mind is it gives students a place of belonging. And hopefully it gives students a place of security in a school setting where maybe they don't always feel like they belong, or they don't always feel secure. And I think that that's something that I notice in my program more and more. Something I love about our program and our student population. There's a feeling of teamwork, of camaraderie, of artfulness, of exploration of theater as an art form, but also of friendships, of relationships, and working together. I think that the arts are just so invaluable in teaching us about ourselves and the world, especially theater, certainly. And so there are benefits that I could go on and on about.
Great. And so what do you think is special about Alexandria's theater program in comparison to just any other high school program?
Oh, that's kind of a tough one, since I'm kind of in the thick of it. But let me see what I can say. So we have a 6 through 12 theater curriculum. Our middle school program has a sort of elective for sixth graders. Every seventh grader takes an exploration class. There's a thriving middle school program with many, many students involved in 2 plays per year. And then at the high school level, we have a fall musical and a 1-act play. And we also sometimes offer a spring play, though we haven't for a couple of years. The pandemic and other reasons, I think, are part of that. I think maybe what sets us apart or makes us different from other programs is we do offer a lot of curricular opportunities. Not every school system in Minnesota is able to offer that. So at the high school level, we have 4 electives that students can take. And that is an intro to theater class, an advanced theater class where students learn history of theater, among other things, and then a musical theater class and an acting and improvisation class. It's wholly a workshop. So it's completely a workshop scenario when it comes to the type of course that's offered. I think that might be what sets us apart. We've had some success in 1-act play, and I think that that might be something that theater folk in Minnesota know about. Yeah, it's every time I step into my classroom, I don't know if this sets us apart or anything, but I have to say every time I step into my classroom, it's just all joy. And I feel that our program is pretty special in that we develop some really wonderful relationships while we learn and while we make art. And I love that part of it too.
So what are your tactics for picking out shows, whether it be the fall show or for 1-act or whatever other productions you do? What do you like to look for in a piece?
Oh, this is such a great question. Let's see, I think the first thing that I look for is something where I, as an artist, as a director, I'm connected to the material. I think that the best directors pick something that they want to spend time in and they want to spend months and months on, and they're not going to get sick of the play. They're not going to get, they're not going to get bored of it after a certain amount of time. So that's the first thing I look for. And then beyond that, I'm looking for something that I think students will love and be interested in. And I oftentimes will kind of just like ask students things that they're interested in, or types of work, types of plays. And then beyond that, for me personally, as a director, my style has a lot to do with kind of workshopping, blocking, workshopping movement, and using metaphor. And so because of that, we often are looking at pieces where the staging isn't super prescribed or super static, and it's something that we could play with. My students, I've found, really enjoy that, and they are invested in that sort of work. And so that's another thing that I look for.
Nice. And did I read this correctly? Just doing some background research. Are you also a playwright?
Yes, I am. Yes.
A little bit more about that, please.
Sure. Yeah, I started writing for my students years ago. I started my teaching career in Iowa. And I was also a speech coach. So in Iowa, I was able to write some shorter scripts, and I started kind of developing my voice as a playwright that way. And then more recently, I started writing 1-act plays for my students. One of my plays has been published by Eldridge Plays and Musicals. That's Icarus. And I went on to write some more full-length works. Most recently, I developed our most recent 1-act play, Trousers, into a full-length play. And one of my plays was a semifinalist for the Austin Film Festival screenwriting or playwriting competition. And so that's kind of been a really long journey for me, but I've always really enjoyed it. And it's just another avenue of making theater that I enjoy.
Nice.
So how do you work with students to develop characterization?
One of the first things that we do is we always try to set aside a number of rehearsals at the start of our rehearsal period for table work and character work. We try to work both ways, outside in and inside out during that time. So I have a little character sheet that students will fill out that includes like everything from their character's astrological sign that they can make up if it's not scripted, to like favorite food or your character's favorite memory. I know a lot of directors do this type of work with actors, and it kind of, that sort of information that they may not have been thinking about before, it just kind of helps inform their performance. Never something that, you know, gets added to a script or anything, but it's just something that they can use as data, as information. And then we do a lot of work with viewpoints technique, just developing the world of the play. And that also includes what kind of movement, what kind of stylized things do we want to do as characters? How do we lead our walk? How does our walk or our movement look different and feel different in our bodies than that of our own walk, our own personal walk? And so after that kind of like few rehearsals, 3 or 4 rehearsals of table work and some movement workshop, then we start blocking. And I've found that foundation, if we get stuck in a rehearsal, returning to that foundation and me just like asking a question about a character's movement or their favorite color might jog something in an actor who feels stuck.
Sure. And so what are some of your favorite shows that you've directed, whether it be your fall shows or your one acts? I remember, I don't know if I must have been at Alexandria High School. When I was in high school at State, there was a show about 2 authors. I can't remember what the title was, but I just remember the papers in the air in one of those scenes and how stunning that was. Do you remember what title of that show was?
I do. Yes, that was Gross Indecency, the 3 Trials of Oscar Wilde.
Yes, that was my senior year, I think.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, I really loved working on that play. It's a Moises Kaufman play, and I really enjoy his work. I worked on the Laramie Project years ago. That has a special place in my heart, that production, for kind of the same reason that you shared, that we were able to find some metaphor that really worked with some like physicalization of metaphor that really worked with our play. I thought the most climactic moments. Let's see what else is on my I've really enjoyed, I directed Footloose a number of years ago, and that ensemble, that group of people has really just stayed in my memory as a group of young people that I really loved working with. During the pandemic, we did an online one act, which I do not want to do again. But it was Sophie Treadwell's Machinal, and that sticks in my mind as just brand new challenges, the students working through brand new challenges. It's kind of like, you know, asking a parent who their favorite child is. Like, there are certain reasons why I would pick each one of the plays or musicals I've directed, but those are some that come to mind right away.
Right. And I think oftentimes the favorite show is usually the one you're working on at the time, probably.
Absolutely. And as I think it should be that way. That should be the way that we go about making art.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of your favorite theater memories?
Oh, so this might be a little bit of a cop-out of answering that question, but some of my favorite theater memories are not on a stage. They happen every day in the classroom. When students are able to make discoveries or learn something about themselves through their own performance. Or, for example, we were doing an Uta Hagen exercise last week with my acting and improvisation class. And an actor just has to bring in some business that they would do, like folding laundry or picking up after themselves around their room or something like that. So I had a student who decided he was going to brush his teeth as a matter of business, and everyone in the class at the end of it, all he did was brush his teeth. That was the assignment, was to brush his teeth, and he was paying attention to like his inner thoughts and what was happening outside at the same time. It's part of the assignment. But he was just so entertaining brushing his teeth without adding anything extra that his class gave him a standing ovation, and we all just kind of laughed afterwards. It's those sort of moments mixed with maybe some more heartfelt moments or some more really meaningful, edifying moments that as a theater educator, I think stand out to me. I hope that answers your question to some degree.
Yes,
What are
definitely.
some of the things?
Oh, sorry. No, I love how student-based you are. How you really look at that individual student, how that affects them, and you use theater as kind of a vessel for that. And I think that's wonderful. That's what we should be doing, definitely.
Thank you.
What are some of the things you struggle with most when you're directing?
Ooh, okay. So the first thing that comes to mind is having a healthy work-life balance. And I think that a lot of artists and a lot of educators struggle with this. I'm certainly probably not alone in this. And that's something that I have been learning about myself for the past 17 years as an educator, and always trying to improve on. It's something that I struggle with. Another thing that comes to mind is, for example, I have auditions this evening for our fall musical next year. We audition in the spring so students can clear their schedules and just have a really good indication of what happens for them in the fall. And I know that there will be some people who I really care about who are unhappy, probably, or disappointed or surprised by how things go when the cast list comes out. And that's inevitable. That's every director's experience, and I'm not alone in that, but my heart goes out to them in those moments because I know it really matters to them. And also just like, I am not a technical theater person, and I'm so thankful for the folks in the world who are good at all of that. It really is a struggle for me in finding someone who kind of is able to interpret my like poetic director speak about what I'd love to see as art design when it comes to like lighting design, for example. It's just it's a little bit more of a challenge or a hurdle than for example, talking to an actor. And so that's just one of the things that comes to mind too.
And lastly, what are some pieces of advice you'd give to a beginning director or teacher?
Okay. Maybe the first thing I would say is you can work fewer hours and it will be okay. If you do not have a lot of help, reach out, because oftentimes parents have some skills you might not know about, your community members want to help. Students have some skills that you might also not know about unless you ask. And giving students some responsibility that you might not think of right away is a great way to get their investment in the play as a whole. You don't have to do everything alone. You can have the help of other folks. And if you keep your work student-centered rather than self-directed or about yourself as much as we can as artists, I think that is not losing sight of that is just really important as much as you are able to.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We enjoyed having you on the show. We hope the best for your program in the future, and maybe we'll see you at the O'Shaughnessy next winter.
That would be an absolute delight. I just want to thank you so much for inviting me. It was an honor to be a part of this. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, have a good day.
You as well. Thank you.